Hi guys, we're back. Hold on. These are questions that were asked to the BBC before today. They've just done a call out to ask if anyone from the BBC will come and speak.
Have declared a climate emergency. Would the BBC like to collaborate on a people's assembly to discuss their future coverage of the climate crisis? Why has the BBC not declared a climate emergency? Does anyone know? No response. Given the eminent forecasting coverage of COVID-19 due to health risks, climate emergency should be reported on as a top priority. Extensive health and livelihood threats by the Dutch and UK people of this planet. No response. And finally, what does BBC coverage like to do in the future to help cover the climate emergency? What do you plan to do?
Those are all the questions that were asked to the BBC.
BBC Wales covers many climate change and environmental issues across a range of programmes. We know how important these issues are and how urgent, and we continue to work saving the land, our lives, saving our ecosystem, and multi-platform news coverage, while internally doing all we can to lead the way promoting sustainability in the media industry. BBC Wales' new broadcasting centre, right behind me, at Central Square, has been awarded a green. New construction rating, outstanding! The highest level of sustainability, a massive concrete building with no green around it. Highest level of sustainability.
We're shouting greenwash.
I think this shows.
If you've just joined, we're at the BBC buildings doing an alternative broadcast. We're about to hear from some panel of experts. The Red Rebels are here.
It's not enough just to have a few programs here and there talking about the environment, talking about our great lands that we have. It's got to be front page. It's got to be straight to us. Programs need to focus on this and need to lead by example.
Yes.
So my first guest today is Dr. Patrick Brote, an academic who lectures in journalism, media and culture department at Cardiff University. Please give a big round of applause for Dr. Catherine Walsh.
Dr. Catherine Walsh from Cardiff University.
Hello. So I gather you researched the press coverage of Extinction Rebellion. Is that right?
So I think what we used to research, what I did is actually more around money and politics. So I'm a lecturer in political communication, just the building behind me here actually, where I work. And I've been doing that for several years, and particularly interested in money and where money kind of moves politics. But lately I've gotten interested in Extinction Rebellion, and it's funny because when I started my academic career years ago, what was happening on the other side, which you share, I know some of you were children when that was happening, or maybe not even around at all. But Occupy was, again, people asking for saying the world is not working, what should we do on? And that's when Extinction Rebellion, I think, is so I became interested in it, and in the last year or so, I've been looking with another colleague of mine but how this is affected as well.
So how does the press usually tend to cover environmental movements?
So I think there's two things to think about there. There's quantity and there's sort of quality. And the first thing to think about is quantity. That's a bit easier to measure. Even that's tough. Because if you think about it, you've got newspapers, and maybe you could count the words or count the articles. Then you've got what's going on TV or broadcast. Well, maybe we
Starting to rain here.
see how long that segment's last. Then there's the internet. How do you measure the volume of things on the internet? So even when you're thinking about how much coverage are you getting, so I think that's the first question, how much? It's hard to measure and it's variable, but I will say, looking across, say, the last 10 years, looking at people who studied this, typically environmental coverage tends to be something I'd say in Europe and North America between maybe 1% and 5% by volume, depending.
Just 1% and 5%.
Between something like that, so maybe an average of 2 or 3%. Typically of all, say if you're a newspaper, everything you're going to cover that day. Environmental issues typically are around 1% and 2%, 1, 2, 3%. That's fairly typical.
So given the climate and ecological emergency that the government has declared, should media coverage of that be more than 1 to 5%?
Everyone here would certainly say so. You can imagine, I think you can listen to what you're reading before, but you ask them to be and their response. It does sound like you're not quite, almost like not quite talking about the same thing, answering the same question, does it? They see their role a bit differently than they see their role a bit differently. They look at you and they see advocacy. They see a group that wants something. And of course they look at themselves and say, well, we'll cover that, but of course we'll cover other things as well. And of course when you're a news outlet, you're always thinking about what does the audience want. And so when you see differences, the BBC is kind of a bit of a broad church, right? It's funded by the license fee, it's supposed to be something that's useful to everyone. As opposed to other news outlets, which might be a bit more niche, which know that they have a particular audience. So however the BBC is covering it, they've made two judgments. One is they've thought about what their mandate is, their editorial mandate, and we were talking about that. They're thinking about what the audience wants. They're thinking about also what it means. I ask my students this every year, a couple of weeks into when I'm teaching political communication, what is news? And I always get the same kind of scared looks with faces looking at me like, it's a trick question. Because we're all doing a journalism degree, so it's obvious. Except what is new? And I know they think I'm trying to trick them because in the third year I get the same students in my money class and halfway through asking the same question to get the same looks. So they absolutely think it's a trick. But what is news? News, there are many definitions, but one of them is news is whatever a journalist thinks is newsworthy. There's a person, and you asked the BBC to come here today. I mean, and my guess is they probably have. They aren't here now. My guess is that at some point they will have filmed some of this for the news tonight. I would think. I don't know. I won't know until I see the news tonight. But something about you guys being here today, they think is news. So what do they think is news? What is making them make that decision? And that's a big part of it as well. Is how do they cover you? What do you give them to cover? They really like, what do you see on the news all the time? What does the news like? And the news likes, especially because it's all online now and all that clickable stuff and the images are so important, they like a compelling image. I've seen a bunch down here. I liked your samba dance. That was fantastic. And then the people in red.
The Red Rebels, yeah.
Yeah, the Red Rebels. Yeah.
Shout out to the Red Rebels.
Shout out to them, absolutely. You know, those are the sorts of things. I suspect one thing we know actually about Extinction Rebellion, one thing that I think we know, is that Extinction Rebellion, and from the work I've seen lately, my own other people's, Extinction Rebellion, you have to forgive us in universities, we study you and it takes us a while to study you, and you're very new. You only really came to our notice in 2019. It's not very long ago. But it does seem like the very public sort of interventions that you've made have certainly made an impact. I think in terms of volume, you're certainly covered more. I think, and we're not the only people who think this, other people have seen it. I think it kind of jives with what we see ourselves in the news, that there's more coverage because you're out here doing something that's visible, that journalists kind of take an interest in.
How do you think we can make that coverage, make the next step in the coverage from just being, you know, these people are the outsiders, they're trying to do something, rather than the BBC needs to incorporate us because this affects us all. How do you think?
that's really hard. And if I had an answer to it, I'm sure lots of people would pay me lots of money for it, the answer. I mean, when you think about the movement itself, and who's in the movement, and who's here today, I mean, Extinction Rebellion shares a lot of characteristics with other movements that have come before it. Occupy, yes, but also Center for Nuclear Disarmament, and in a way it's actually all the way back to abolition and temperance movements more than 100 years ago. A small group of people who feel very strongly about something in a moral sense, but then maybe struggle, I think, to get the messages in two directions. And one is out to a wider audience who maybe have more bread and butter issues on their minds today, I think, or more immediate issues, maybe a way to put it. And another one is to get it higher up. You guys want this bill to go through. Now whether or not you get your bill is down to some very elite people in a very small group, some of whom agree with you and some of whom quite possibly don't, or think that you're all getting a bit upset about something that they can't do much about it, whatever they might say about that. And so in a sense, there's two messages in terms of, how are we better heard and how do we make a greater impact? When you think about it, you've probably actually got two audiences. From the polling I've seen, a lot of people do generally agree with a lot of the aims that you have. But as a group, you're still quite small. Now, that doesn't mean small groups can't accomplish a lot. And I think Extinction Rebellion was founded on the idea that small groups could. That actually a small group of people who felt very strongly and were very strategic and non-violent about what they were doing could accomplish a lot. I think you always need to think about your audience, though. A big audience for a demonstration like this, frankly, are the journalists who will cover it. There are lots of people who are on their way to the station who will see us today on the street. But for this to go beyond the station, of course, it needs to have these images that people want to send out. It needs to have this clear sort of message, and it needs to make the news. I think Extinction Rebellion itself feels that their very first rebellion was covered more than their second. And in part, that's because of just novelty. One of the things journalists look for is it new? And the first time this massive demonstration hit the streets, it was very new, and stopped at occupied places, it was very new. And later, it's still interesting, but maybe a little less, and you're always trying to up that ante to try to capture attention. I think it would be a good idea to think about, all those people who generally agree with you, but are kind of trying to get on with their day, what they might need to hear. And then there's a different thing entirely, which is those few hundred people who decide whether or not you get your bill. And they're a different kettle of fish entirely.
So do you think the media portrays the climate emergency as a true reality, or do you think there is still climate skepticism within the media?
I think there's less of that than there used to be. I can't swear to this. From the research I've seen that, not me, but other people have done in the last few years, I would say that it looks like climate skepticism, sort of in the press anyway, and I'm talking about newspapers, seems to have kind of, I would say, peaked. It looks to me like that, although, you could get another academic who came up and said, no, I found lots of instances. But that sort of thing where, there are a lot of climate deniers and they're getting lots of editorial time and stuff, it's not that never happens anymore, but I think a lot of people have kind of come along. That doesn't mean that's not happening online. It's really hard to measure what's happening online. Where do you start? Everybody sees a different Twitter feed. Some people are Instagram, some people aren't. Very, very difficult to measure what's happening online. So
which news outlets do you think has some of the better coverage?
Well, better means sort of more as XR
more
would like.
More thorough coverage.
Oh, more. Okay. Now, they're two different questions in a way. So, what I think is probably most sympathetic to you probably is The Guardian, actually, is my guess. It's not entirely a guess. I've seen a little bit of data around that as well. When you think about it, Guardian readership and Guardian writers share a general demographic with a lot of people who support Extinction Rebellion. So, but the big thing about the Guardian is that they have declared editorial policy about it. So you go on the Guardian website and you look, they've decided that this is one of the things, this is sort of one of the campaigns they're going to care about. So they're probably most friendly toward you. But that wasn't exactly the question as I heard it, because there's that, and then there's the best coverage. One of the ongoing problems with journalism in general, and this is why it's kind of agreement on this, and it's not just you guys, it's anybody who's got a complex cause. What a complex cause, what a complex idea. Everything you're talking about is about the future, it's about the economy, it's about buildings, infrastructure, the way we eat, the way we travel. It's a massive, complex problem, much of which belongs in the future, and nobody knows the future. How many of you thought you'd all be wearing face masks a year ago? Right?
Not me.
Whew, exactly. Frankly, people in 2007 didn't know what 2008 would look like. Nobody in 2000 knew how much we'd be talking about terrorism the second half of 2001. Nobody knows the future. So that's one of the problems, is that it's very, this is all really complex, and it's all in the future. So it's really hard to cover. Like, if you're talking about what would good coverage be? Well, I guess that would be kind of long-form journalism, the long read, that kind of stuff. That stuff's great, we like it when we see it, but it's not what most of journalism is made of. Most of journalism is tight deadlines, one guy with a camera running around, or one woman with a camera running around, trying to get a story quickly, turn it back to their boss.
So do you think, for most media outlets, money is the driver and the audience is key?
Largely, yeah, the audience
So
is always...
therefore, would we need to change the public's perception and try and change who they're going to for their media, rather than maybe trying to change the media?
Yeah, I mean, good luck changing the media. That's a massive institution. That's big. I was saying this morning I was doing DIY. I had to level a dishwasher, level some countertops. I don't know if anyone's ever done that. When you level things, you know how you raise one leg and it messes up what's gone on the other leg? You kind of think of society like that in a way. Public opinion, and changes in public opinion, and changes in the way we discuss things are always hard fought and hard won. And there's going to be no magic button. Oh, we'll change the media and it'll be different. We'll change people's opinions and it'll be different. It's all going to be by increments. Every social movement has always found that. As far as the coverage goes, you can understand that journalists themselves are working with their sort of the way they cover things. They're working with their own constraints. Their editors are telling them what to do. The audience wants something else. There's a profit motive behind most of it. We talked about the BBC, of course, they're paid for by the license fee. And so you guys kind of feel like, you should cover us the right way because the public pays for you and this is important to the public.
So therefore, do we, as Extinction Rebellion, as protesters, need to demand from our media organisations directly, depending on the programming, demand that the climate emergency and climate-related issues are put into the programming, are made top priority? Do we need to complain to them? Do we need to massively complain to these companies and say, we're really not happy with this, writing letters? Would that make any difference?
I don't know how successful the letter writing campaign, it might be. I mean, groups like Amnesty have worked off letter writing for a really long time. It's a way you can do things. And of course now people can tweet their complaints and all that kind of stuff too. You can complain. There absolutely is no silver bullet. The BBC has a license fee. Almost everything else has to pay the bills basically by ad revenue. It's not what you pay. Lord knows on the internet you're paying, I'm sure most of you pay nothing. It all runs on ad revenue, and frankly it always did. So that's also part of it as well. I mean, the people who sell you stuff are the people who pay for the media. And if part of your message is anti-consumerism, it's one of the most fascinating things about XR, why I watch it so carefully, is that, the people who pay for the media are doing it to sell you stuff, and one of the main messages of XR is stop buying stuff. Wow, I do not have an answer for you. Wow, it's tough. One of the things that I think, and this is one of the ways in which XR shares a lot of, it has a lot in common with earlier movements, is this really strong moral sense that I know a lot of you carry. And I feel it as well, that, this is something we need to do for our kids and our grandkids because it's the right thing to do, and the birds and the bees and all that. And of course, the people who are making decisions in media and a lot of the general public just think about things slightly differently in more bread and butter terms. And I think probably more thought has to kind of be put behind that. I didn't come with any answers. I hope nobody thought I came with answers. I did not come with answers, but
Right.
Things to think about.
That was a very nice conversation we had. I would like to finish there and thank Dr. Catherine Walsh.
No worries.
That's
a good sound filter.
The band is now going to start, and we're going to try and move everyone to the other side. So if we can get everyone to move around to the other side for a reason which you might understand in a minute, please, we can just get you to move over there, and we will be back in a brief moment.
Okay,
After that, we will have audience participation where you can have your chance to say how you
We're
feel
going to go and
about
follow
the
the
media's
Samba band a bit.
coverage
That was a
of the
conversation with
climate
Dr.
emergency.
Catherine Walsh from Cardiff University about the media and how her research has gone about the media and how we've changed public perception. I'm just going to move over here, so I'm going to get run over by the Samba band. Gonna head over here. For those of you that missed our broadcast yesterday, we were in the centre of town talking about rising tides. That nice flag is reminding us of that a lot of Cardiff will be underwater by 2050 if we don't do what we need to get the CEE bill backed through Parliament and act now. So a new view of the stage from the railway station behind it. Over here to see the Samba band. Another reminder, write to your MP about the CEE bill. We are asking the BBC to cover this story because it is the most important story. This guy's gluing on inside the BBC building.
Sorry, can you just move back?
Keep your social distancing, please.
Some wonderful stewards reminding us to keep our social distance.
Step back, please. Thank you.
Please, social
Guys are glued on, the police are trying to remove their hands. Lots more police turning up. Reminder there what we're here for.
Get back my coffee in the end.
Someone removed there. We're here at the BBC building. Rebels. About past the security.
Guys, can we make sure we're socially distancing, yeah? Socially distancing, masks up.
Everyone reminded to socially distance
You
because
step back, please. I've had a couple of times now.
yeah, it's funny they ask you to step back and then they step forward. Summer band still playing. Moving fast outside the BBC buildings. Officers in there in the blue. Banner there. Might be glued on. Looking at what I'm seeing on the broadcast, I can't see. 4 brave rebels still there, blocking the doors to the BBC building with a banner that says "Tell the Truth" and a cardboard banner saying "Ask your MP to support the climate and ecological emergency bill." Which, if you're watching this, please make sure that everyone you know is doing that. Write to them, tweet them, call them, turn up at their offices. You guys having some water? blocking the doors to the building. I believe one of them's glued on. With a banner demanding that the media tell the truth about the climate and ecological emergency. A lot of Cardiff is going to be underwater by 2050. It's the sixth most at risk from rising seas. Loads of police blocking the way here. More police turning up over there. Looks like the tactical entry unit, which we learned about yesterday. All these guys turning up. Interesting, none of them wearing masks.
Yeah. Definitely standing closer than 2 meters as well.
Yeah. I love how we're reminded to social distance, but yours aren't. Maybe they've hand sanitized. Joke.
They got no intention of moving.
Bit of an arbitrary mask policy in the police, I think. Just keep your hair, guys, watch these police. Anyone that's just joined us, we're outside the BBC building in Wales, in Cardiff, with 4 rebels blocking the doors to the BBC building. About 20 odd police, probably more here. They all arrived without masks on. They've suddenly put masks on now. Probably when it's watching my live stream. Police suddenly putting masks on after the event. Which seems completely pointless, but there we are.
Coronavirus has shown us that the media can do things differently. They can put a health emergency at the top of the editorial priority. So why not do that with the climate crisis?
These guys are broadcasting. Now we've got these guys blocking the doors.
Whatever that may be. It's not only the responsibility of environmentalists to protect our planet. This emergency will affect us all, regardless of who we are or where we come from. This affects us all.
And chanting, tell the truth. Guys, are these banners with this, guys?
We need to know the truth so we can act accordingly in a way that reflects the likely disastrous consequences of warming climate change that
Please
we
pulling
have
out rebels
presented
that
to you today. This is why we demand the media to tell the truth.
Tell the truth! Tom.
I will now invite
Okay guys, if anyone's just joined us, we're outside the BBC building
Dr. Aaron
in Wales, Cardiff. We've got 4 rebels outside blocking the doors.
member of scientists for Extinction Rebellion.
Lots of police presence. And our alternative broadcast over here asking and demanding the media to start telling the truth about the ecological and emergency bill.
Lovely to see you all here today. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to get straight into it. Do you think the general public are ill-informed about the real impact of the climate emergency? Yes. I'm afraid so. I think both the severity
Got some broadcasting.
and urgency and scale of the crisis is not properly
Got
understood.
chalk on the floor saying tell the truth. BBC. Someone's being arrested over here. One of the rebels being taken away over here. The support crew with her.
Maybe a bit, maybe a little bit.
We'll head back to where the 4 rebels are blocking the BBC doors whilst we do an alternate broadcast on what the media should be saying.
They think that governments are
There they are.
much better than they really are. So there's a lot of misinformation about the current severity of the crisis. How do you think the media should be better covering the climate emergency so people understand the severity and the things they could and could be commanded?
David, what's the guy's name that's being interviewed?
Aaron Thierry.
Aaron Thierry.
Aaron Thierry.
You've actually just done that for the Facebook Live. Aaron Thierry.
Yeah, he's a doctor. He's from Cardiff. He's also part of XR scientists.
Okay, amazing. Thank you.
Climate change doctor.
Thank you.
There's no debate about it, there's no confusion about it, it's what you have to do. And it's often very clear instructions, right? Make sure you're wearing a mask, make sure you're washing
Guys, let me know in the
your hands.
comments if you'd rather me try and follow the interview.
The messaging is really clear. Everybody
This.
gets that there's an urgency, that there's an emergency. We have statistics that are talked about daily about how many people are dying, how many people are being treated, what are we actually doing, right? That's what coverage of this crisis looks like. So that's not what we're getting right now. And previously the most coverage about the crisis. And often that, it's even that is low down on the headlines, or it's just when a new report comes out. It's not a daily thing. It's not something that we're kind of shown to be concerned about and what we can do about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think coronavirus has shown us a way that we can and should inform the public about health crises, and the climate emergency is a massive health crisis to us all.
Absolutely. We declared the greatest threat to public health of the 21st century, and that's by the Lancet, the UK's leading medical journal. The World Health Organization says that we are in a planetary health emergency right now.
So I repeat, the greatest threat
To public health of the 21st century.
The greatest threat to public health of the 21st century.
Do you think the media has misled the public about the climate emergency?
I would say yes. I think probably as a whole institution rather than particular groups or individuals. I think there's been a massive, we have to really understand, okay, that there's been a massive misinformation campaign carried out by vested interests, and this has all been very well documented by academics, by social scientists, by scholars of journalism, to show the way in which the fossil fuel companies in particular, but also other large industries, have basically paid for talking heads to go up onto TV and can just say that, you know, science isn't settled, there's uncertainty, we don't know how serious it's going to be, right? And this is then picked up by journalists to create this kind of false balance in the debate. And they put up a scientist, like myself, who's schooled for decades, for years in doing the research, understanding what the science says, and then they put them up against one of these PR spin doctors who's trained all their lives to kind of just spin the truth and make up things and make them sound convincing, and then they leave it up to the public to decide what's actually happening. And that's then created this huge confusion for a really long time. I mean, again, you talked about it a bit earlier about the climate deniers and climate skeptics kind of being really part of the debate. And unfortunately, I would say the BBC was one of the worst at this. Because for a really long time, they kept inviting climate deniers like Nigel Lawson from the Global Warming Policy Foundation and put them on the Today programme or Newsnight or whatever and treated them as though that their opinion was equal to that of the overwhelming majority of climate scientists. And that, for the public, is really confusing because they're hearing two voices and they don't know necessarily who's the better, more authoritative case all the time. And so, reasonably, the public then says, well, let's wait until we're sure, let's wait until it's settled, and then we'll make a decision. And by doing that, the fossil fuel industry has managed to delay action on climate change by 40 years. And if we carry on letting them do it, they'll delay it until it's a disaster. It already is disastrous, but it's catastrophe, right? And I think the key point is that climate denial is morphing, right? It used to be outright rejection that the world was warming, or that we were causing it. And that's not really possible anymore. The facts are just too obvious. They're staring us in the face. But what we're getting instead is kind of a delay spin on it, okay? So the climate delayers now. They're saying, well, it might not be that bad, or, you know, we'll find ways of coping and adapting to it, or we'll find ways of, geoengineering in the future that will solve it. We don't have to do anything right now. We can carry on with business as usual right now. And that message is what we're starting to see. And so people are saying it's too expensive to act with the right speed that we need. And so we're hearing a lot of people using these kind of economic arguments saying, you know, yes, we'll get to net zero in 2050, but we don't have to act right now.
Can't rotate my phone.
I think it's very similar to the tobacco companies back in the late 1960s, 1980s, who gave massive misleading arguments to the public and misled them to a point where they didn't really know the full severity of the issues they were faced with, even those that the tobacco companies knew full and well the damage that it does to human health.
It's even closer than you think there, Lance, because actually it was exactly the same spin doctors, it was exactly the same PR company who, having worked with the tobacco company and built this toolkit, this playbook of confusing the public on that issue, they then went and worked for the fossil fuel industry. So when they found out with the fossil tobacco, they just stick to where they worked for the fossil fuel industry in the 1990s. And you know, it's exactly the same players. You can check it out. It's quite incredible and unconscionable. I mean, these people are literally being responsible now for the deaths of hundreds of millions of people.
What role does scientists play in informing the public?
So I think there's different answers to that. I think we can speak of what scientists should do as scientists, and I think what they've been doing for the last 30, 40 years is publishing reports about the scientific information and trying to get that out into the public discourse. And I think that's one way in which scientists can and have been trying to raise awareness about this. And I think, you know, if you look at the reports, they've been getting more and more alarming, and the language has been getting stronger and stronger, saying, you know, we need urgent, radical, transformative action, and that we're kind of running out of time. And that's been really clear about all of these reports, saying it's getting later and later and later in the day to act. So that's one way. So then I think there's another way, which is like I'm doing here right now, which is actually as a citizen, as a human who knows about this issue perhaps more than most people, getting out on the streets and actually showing people how concerned and alarmed I am about this, and actually saying that I can't sit at home knowing that the fate of things that people I love, species I love, places I love, values I hold dear, like freedom and democracy, are at risk because our government and our media refuse to tell the truth about these things and refuse to act with the seriousness that's needed. So that's why I'm here alongside you all today in solidarity. And I'm not going to go home until we get action. Come on, everyone.
Yeah, I can't see how much battery I've got. I'm probably going to die, but I'll keep going until it does.
move on. It's really important to get different views on this issue. So I'm going to present the audience, you out there, with a statement. And if you would like to comment on the statement directly, then I'll give you a chance to do it on the microphone. So we're going to try and get.
So there's a statement being presented to everyone here, and everyone who wants to can have a chance to respond to it. Police are walking off over there. I wonder what's going on. Okay. Yeah.
So if you would like to talk about this, please go behind the stage.
Should I keep this on?
And we will get
There's not much.
a little triangle on your face. If we could have possible some standby.
Liberty's phone's about to die. Liberty's phone's about to die. I think mine's about to die as well, but I can't see while it's on here. My battery pack's dead as well. Don't know why I'm still.
I'm not sure if mine has keys, but
Do we have any Wales people here? We could. Just whether we want to keep live streaming all of this. Probably been on for about an hour now.
I guess maybe get an hour is good. I guess maybe get Libby to stay around for the end of it, like when they get taken away.
Okay.
So we can get some footage.
For Facebook.
Yeah, or maybe like video deals and then concern.
Okay, so should I close off this then? Yeah.
And I think you're all marvellous.
You got 10 seconds. You live stream?
Yeah.
Is keeping us all
I'm about to close it off there.
Okay, well, let you close it up.
Okay. Hi guys, so I'm going to close off now. We'll get some footage of the end of the action here. Thanks for tuning in.